I start with an introductory video about FrontierDAO, just so that people kind of get a little bit situated and sort of know what we're about. It's just 2 minutes, so we'll be right back.
FrontierDAO is a decentralized autonomous organization focused on scientific and engineering innovation. It is one of the first DAOs focused on scientific pursuits, hence one of the pioneers in DeSci, decentralized science. As a collective, FrontierDAO's main mission is to make scientific research, collaboration, innovation, and commercialization more accessible to wider groups of people, regardless of where they come from. Our philosophy, echoing that of NASA's, is that good ideas come from everywhere, and we are using the blockchain and Web3 tooling to help facilitate that people with good ideas, drive, and determination get access to funding, mentorship, peer support, and paths towards collaboration and commercialization, while still protecting their IP. FrontierDAO is committed to creating public goods by leveraging emerging technologies to benefit every human being on our planet. Catalyzing space and fusion technology incubation, FrontierDAO is working towards the vision of clean energy democracy. That is, clean, cheap, abundant, on-demand energy for all. By facilitating multiple pathways for funding for fusion energy innovation, FrontierDAO aims to collectively help make clean, affordable, and accessible energy available for everyone on the planet. We aim to do this by supporting paths to commercialization of this new technology, while still protecting the rights of the inventors and researchers to ultimately create a more vibrant, abundant future on this world and off-world that is shared more equally by all. FrontierDAO's work to support research as well as inclusivity in science, engineering, and the aerospace industry includes adopting space technologies to earth sciences to improve the quality of life on planet Earth as we simultaneously reach for the stars and become a multi-planetary species. Visit frontierdao.xyz today. If you have questions or would like to know more, feel free to reach out to co-founder Paige on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. So here we are in our ski lift, because Jas Purewal and I thought that would be the perfect setting, since I think most people have winter vacation on their minds right now. So we're giving everyone a bit of a head start, at least visually. And Jas, you are doing so many things. I'm so grateful that you agreed to present today. First of all, thank you very much. I know it's a very busy time for so many people, so I'm very grateful to you for giving us your time this evening. And also, it's just so exciting what you are doing. You are doing a huge project, Analog Astronaut. You are building a very vibrant community of people who want to participate in becoming an astronaut. Some of them have actually even qualified or been candidates for some of the space agencies. And so then for whatever reason, they're pursuing this in an analog way as well. You'll explain more about that to us. And you'll also tell us about your upcoming world's biggest analog conference, which is also very exciting. I believe it's going to be the second one or the third one.
The world's biggest analog?
The conference.
Oh, the conference. Sorry, yeah, the conference will be the second in-person conference and the third overall conference.
Okay, all right. So you're rolling ahead. You're on a roll. You've got a lot of momentum. So I have enabled. Oh, I'm sorry. I've introduced you, but please add to it. Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to and who you are.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me here. It's a real honor to be here and an absolute pleasure. So yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of what I've been working on, which is the Analog Astronaut community and the conference. So that's been going since first started in 2020 during the pandemic, and then we had our first online conference in 2021. And our first in-person conference at Biosphere 2 in Arizona this year in May of 2022. And we're already well into the planning phases for next year's conference as well in 2023. My personal background is, so I'm based in the UK. I'm a research scientist. I studied physics with astrophysics at university. So now I work as a research scientist for a UK national lab. I've also worked over in the US. We partner quite a bit with US labs as well. So that's my day job, I suppose. And so then all of this extra work is done in my free time, just from passion, I suppose, and the love of space.
Oh, really? So this is in your free time. Wow, you're really doing a lot. You've drummed up a lot of momentum. You're building a really vibrant community. That's interesting. So you work for I was curious about the national lab that you work for. Can you say more, or are you not allowed to?
Yeah, that's not something I can really talk too much about.
Okay, fair enough. I do participate a little bit with the U.S. Federal Lab Consortium, and just take their webinars and stuff, keep updated. So I would imagine that maybe like a Lawrence Livermore or National Lab or something like that would be sort of like the equivalent maybe of what they're working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the US has got, we're a much smaller country. The US has got multiple national labs, but it's a similar kind of thing. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's very impressive. Very exciting. Well, again, thank you so much for taking your time to join us this evening. So screen share should be enabled. Let me know if you, let me know if you want to let's see. I just clicked screen share and it's now trying to make me share something, but you should be able to share.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I've got some slides from a online information kind of event that we had in October, which I think might be nice to show while I sort of talk about the community and the work that we're up to. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep, 100%.
Great. So I will make that small, or just make it disappear. And present. Hang on. Let's go to the first slide. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see a title slide that says Analog Astronaut Community Virtual Information Session.
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect visuals.
Perfect. Great. So as I said, this slide deck was put together for an information session that we shared in October. So some of the slides I might just kind of whiz through quite quickly, but I think it's a nice base to start from and just discuss what we're up to, there we go. So I'll start with what is an analog astronaut. I'm not sure if everyone who'll be watching this is already familiar or not. So if you already know what this is, my apologies, but just a quick little introduction of what I think of as an analog astronaut. So analog astronauts participate in the field, usually during space simulations that are analogous to real space missions. They can be from a variety of backgrounds: scientists, artists, engineers. We're hoping to get more tradespeople involved as well. And the purpose of analog missions, again, it varies, but it can include things like human factors research, equipment testing, scientific research, testing of protocols, as some examples. The government space agencies have been using analog missions for a long time. In fact, they date back to the Apollo missions. And the fidelity of analogs can vary quite a bit as well. So on the next slide, I think I've got just some examples of some of the existing analog habitats around the world. And they're all quite varied. When I came to this community, it felt a little bit disjointed. Everybody was kind of doing their own individual things. And so one of the things at the core of creating this community was really trying to centralize that and get some more collaborative research going. And so really the goal, I suppose, of analogs is to strive towards improving human spaceflight via simulations here on Earth. And a quote that I love, which I hear Cyan saying often, is when we solve for space, we solve for Earth. And I think that's really important. So some of the focus of analog research is often tailored to the utilization of limited resources. So, you know, here on Earth, I think for a long time we've been acting like we have like infinite resource, and of course that's led to the world's biggest problems at the moment. If we're talking about simulating habitats on perhaps the moon or Mars or wherever it might be, we're obviously going to have extremely limited resources. So often the focus of some of these analog missions is to do research based around being able to create closed loop systems, minimizing the amount of waste, so recycling as much as possible. There's some really interesting research on using mycelium to eliminate waste. So you're basically trying to, if possible, have zero waste. So it's a completely closed loop system. And so that kind of research is going to have like knock-on benefits to the Earth as well. So I think that's part of what we mean when we say when we solve for space, we solve for Earth, is a lot of the problems we're trying to solve for space missions are going to have an extremely beneficial solution that we can apply here on Earth as well. So here's a map of some of the existing well-established habitats around the world. There's a lot of analog missions that go on. Some don't have permanent habitats. So the list is actually quite long, but these are just some of the permanent habitats that have been around for a number of years. And there's a lot more newer habitats that are kind of up and coming. There's one in Colombia. There's been a few analog missions in India. I think that's affiliated with Amity University out there in Ladakh. I know that the Mars Society is possibly going to build a habitat in Australia. And I've spoken to people who are looking to build habitats in Kenya, in the Philippines. So it's really very much an international community. And that's part of, and I'll talk more about the world's biggest analog a little bit later. I've got some slides towards the end about that, but it really is very much an international effort and an international collaboration. So some of our core values in this community is inclusivity, and that's what we're trying to achieve here as well with this sort of international collaboration. So yeah, going back to the community, what is our mission? As I touched upon already very briefly, it's to centralize and create a thriving community for analog astronauts. It's a platform where we can collaborate, share research and ideas, talk directly to each other and to the habitat directors. And as a community, the goal is to advocate and drive forward the project's missions and solve problems in the interest of our members. So anyone is welcome to join this community. It's a Mighty Networks community, so the URL is there at the bottom of the slide. You don't have to be an analog astronaut already. You don't have to have been on a mission. It could be that you are going on your first mission. It might be that you're just interested in learning more about this. So it really is, again, just stress the inclusivity part of it. Anyone from students all the way up to people who've actually been into space. So we want to be able to make it so that the students have access to the people who've already been into space without any middlemen involved. And you have direct access to the people and the ability to communicate with them and possibly to create collaborations and work together. So this is from the slide that we had for the online webinar where Bailey kind of walked us through the community site. So I won't do that here today, but as I mentioned, it's a Mighty Networks community. Everybody's welcome to join. It's completely free. We have a few initiatives that we're trying to do on the community. It's a little bit like kind of like a Facebook news feed is what your homepage would look like on there. And then we have like a monthly newsletter as well. We're hoping to maybe set up some virtual workshops and events as well in the future. So I encourage everybody, if you're interested, to head over to the Mighty Networks community and join. Okay, so the core of this community is the Mighty Networks and the conference. So every year we are having an international conference that this year just gone in May 2022. As I mentioned, it was at Biosphere 2. Next year, it's also going to be at Biosphere 2 because the setting was just, frankly, it was perfect for what we're all about and what we're thinking of. So this is a great picture actually from this year's conference. We're all kind of gathered outside Biosphere. If you don't know what Biosphere 2 is, I highly recommend the documentary Spaceship Earth. I think it's available on YouTube, and it talks about the Biosphere project. The reason it's called Biosphere 2 is because Earth is meant to be Biosphere 1. So the idea was that they created this, and it's a very large habitat. It can be considered, you know, one of the largest analogs, if you like it, in the world. So they lived in Biosphere 2 for 2 years. And it was really interesting because they actually had a runaway greenhouse effect. So the data that would have been collected from that and the research, I think, would have been invaluable. I think there might have been some loss of data that occurred as well, but you know, that's not for me to kind of go into now. But it's a really fantastic project. You get a great tour of Biosphere while you're there. They've got like a rainforest in there. They've got like a little mini ocean, if you want to call it, a little beach. It really is a fantastic self-contained environment. And it's now, I believe, the University of Arizona that run the site, and they're doing research at it. So yeah, so we're going to have the conference here again next year, and we're very excited to host it there for the 2nd year running. So next year's conference theme is: how can analog research be directly applied to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals? So again, we're really thinking about how we can leverage analogs and this community to really do some good here on Earth and tackle some of the world's biggest problems. So we have a call for abstracts. People are welcome to apply to submit their abstract if they want to present. We also have sponsorship opportunities available for the conference. This is a picture here of Tim and Rochelle, Tim from Relativity Space, presenting at last year's conference. We had this great Trent Tresh doing his spacesuit demonstration at last year's conference as well, which was just very exciting. So this year, next year, we're switching up a little bit. We're going to kick off with a May the 4th be with you party. We're going to have a few extra things like an arcade night. So the beauty of having it at Biosphere is it's a self-contained campus. You stay on the Biosphere campus overnight, so we can have these fun evening activities as well. The Biosphere campus is also home to the SAM analog habitat, which is one of the newest habitats and also one of the more high fidelity habitats. It's going to be a completely hermetically sealed, pressurized hab. So that's a really interesting up and coming place to do research. And we're actually hoping to, well, the plan is to have a mission at SAM before the conference and one after the conference in partnership with Astro Access. And hopefully the crew from the first mission will be presenting at the conference. And we're going for a slightly different approach again with a unconference model next year, because we found that it's great to listen to people's presentations and panels, but it's also great to have discussions and workshops where we, freely are able to talk about some of the biggest problems and challenges and work on them together. Tickets are on sale right now. They're currently early bird prices. So if you are interested in attending the conference, please grab your early bird ticket for $350. You can get that from the Analog Astronaut Conference website, which is just analog-astronaut.com. Okay, so a few other projects that we now have that have kind of spun off from the community is centralized database and the world's biggest analog. So I'm just quickly going to talk about the purpose of the database. Really, the goal of the database was to make it easier to do continuous research and build upon other people's research, and also to avoid any duplicate work. So as I kind of touched upon, like the community was doing great work, but perhaps there wasn't as much collaboration as we would have liked. So the goal of this database is really to get that collaboration going, is to get that continuity of research going, and to avoid that duplication of work. So that's really the idea behind the research database that we're building. And also, we're hoping to make it easier for the habitat directors and mission organizers to select crew by creating maybe a database of interested analog astronauts to opt in and share kind of their information and experience to be considered for an analog mission. Another thing that's quite important and ties in quite well with the world's biggest analog is an initiative we're currently working on to create international standards for analogs. So as I mentioned, the fidelity varies quite a lot between the different missions and habitats. And we really are aiming to create a sort of a guideline, I suppose, and a framework for standards across the board. And again, it's a very much a voluntary opt-in situation. We are in no position to be telling anybody what to do, and that's not what it's about. It's really just a way to make it easier for researchers and for crews to understand the strengths of the habitat that they might be thinking of going to conduct their research. And as part of that, we have interstellar performance labs that we're partnered with as well, who are focused on giving training to crews prior to entering or starting their mission. So now it brings me to the world's biggest analog, which is our, I suppose, most ambitious project. The goal of this is to conduct rigorous scientific research, identify some of the government agencies' research gaps, not just NASA, ESA, and the other government agencies as well, industry or academic partner research as well, and develop communication protocols between the different habitats to carry out collaborative research. So the heart of this will be the rigorous scientific research and collaboration. And we are working with the habitat directors to make this happen. The goal is to conduct a 1 month-long mission in autumn or fall of 2025. It will be a 1 month mission that's conducted simultaneously across the habitats. And yeah, it is a bit of an ambitious goal. I know the timescales are fairly tight, but the beauty of it is just the community is behind it, and that's really what's driving this. And this could be the first of multiple collaborative research missions that we could conduct in the future. So we're currently working on designing this particular mission and the impact that this will have. So a way that, and again, like I've said, inclusivity is one of our kind of core values. So a way that we want to open this up to everybody to be able to participate is we have designed a research competition. So if anybody wanted to be involved in the world's biggest analog, it's possible to submit a research project or experiment that you would like to have carried out during this world's biggest analog mission. It has a few criteria that it has to meet. So it does have to be collaborative, which means it does have to involve the participating habitats. We have a few constraints on, you can enter as an individual or as a team. And obviously it has to be your own original work, or you have to have permission to carry out the research. We're currently just it's only round 1 or phase 1 of this. So it doesn't have to be a well-defined research project just yet. You'll be given the opportunity to refine it in phase 2. And we will also have much more stringent constraints for you at that point as well, and more details of the actual biggest analog mission. So if anyone's interested in entering that competition, head over to analog-astronaut.com/competition, and there's a bit more detail on that webpage as well. The winner for that will receive, basically, I said the most coveted prize would be that they actually get to participate in the world's biggest analog, either as a crew member or maybe as mission support. They will become a formal member of the world's biggest analog mission team. They get to participate in the research and analysis and the publications as applicable to that. Okay, so that's it. So I didn't want to talk too much about on these slides, but if anyone is interested, then there's a few ways that you can get involved. As I mentioned, joining the community would be the best place and the first step to go. We tend to post things in the community first before we post them on our social media pages. The conference tickets are up for sale. If you'd like to attend next year's conference, we'd love to have you. If you're interested in presenting, please submit an abstract. If you're interested in sponsoring as well, please head over to the sponsor page, or reach out to me directly. I'm completely available and open and willing to have conversations with people. That's what community is all about, is, you know, engaging and talking to our community members. So thank you very much. I will close these slides and stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Hey, bravo. That was fabulous, Jas. I can't believe how much you're building just in your free time.
Yeah, it's almost like a second full-time job these days.
Oh yeah, that's it. It definitely looks like, with all you've accomplished, it definitely looks like that. So there's a much bigger research component in the world's biggest analog than I had originally perceived. Can you talk a little bit more about that research component, and also the international aspect? That's actually one of the things I love so much about what your initiative. Do you have a partner in Analog Astronaut? Because it says co-founder, but
did it say co-founder? Okay, so no, co-founder, I don't know what that was referring to. That might be referring to me. I am the co-founder of the Analog Astronaut community, so maybe it's next to my name. So no, so the Analog Astronaut community, I guess, or myself and my team of volunteers, are the ones that are kind of driving the world's biggest analog, but it's very much a collaborative effort with the international habitats. So the way we approach most of our projects, and this is all because the community is at the heart of what we want to do, is to build it together. So get the people or the interested parties involved at the very early stage. So they're designing it with us. So we're very much at the early stages. We literally had our first meeting with the habitat directors this month. And it was a great first meeting. Everybody was engaged, and that's the important thing. And everybody had something to contribute. And so we're very excited. So we're currently at the stage where we're building our narrative, our pitch, and then we will be able to approach partners, research partners, fundraising, anybody who's interested in participating in this. Probably early next year is when we'll be doing that. So that's when we'll be looking at partners.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And so, I mean, there are a few very famous analog astronaut locations. Like, isn't there one is it the Antarctic or is it the Arctic?
So Antarctica, I believe they use like some of the Antarctica bases for that. But I know Mars, which is part of Mars Society, is up in the Flash Mars research station, which I think I had on my map, which is over in Canada. So yeah, that's in a very cold part of the world. Actually, when we had our world's biggest analog meeting, deciding when to have this mission was, it was a tricky sort of situation, because you have like the ones you mentioned in Antarctica or in the Arctic and they have a very different field season to, say, MDRS in the Utah desert, and and maybe some of the others like Habitat Marte or Lunares. So working out a time frame for that was a bit of a challenge, but we've opted for a precursor test mission with some of the HABs that can really only operate in the summer season, and we're going for and then we're going to go for the main mission in the sort of September, October time of 2025.
In 2025?
Yes, 2025. Yeah.
Great. God, it's almost like an element of the Artemis missions in a way.
So the kind of the thinking behind the world's biggest analog was to mimic a off-world settlement, essentially. So, you know, yeah, Artemis, exactly. Like at some point we're going to have a lunar settlement, and it's not necessarily going to be just like, you know, just NASA. So it's going to be different countries involved, and they're going to have their own habitats. So how do we work together? How do we collaborate together? And this is really at the heart of what this drove this project, is figuring out how to do that. All these habitats have very different communication protocols. They have very different ways of doing things. And so we have to consider that, but also be able to collaborate. And so that's what we're hoping to do. So now the timing of this, I kind of, in my mind, is perfect, really, because it has to happen now, because we're, you know, at the stage where, you know, they're launching Artemis, and we're talking about going back to the moon, and this is all like, it's exciting. So yeah, the timing couldn't be better, I think, really.
Yeah, those are such good and insightful points. Because I mean, you're so right. It's one thing to talk about collaboration, but it's one thing to actually put the systems in place. I actually just recently I was on a conference where a bunch of scientists were talking about putting collaborative systems in place so that all stakeholders felt like they had felt that they could participate in the conversation, right? So that there wasn't one stakeholder imposing any sort of a vision or even a problem, you know, on the others. And it's just the nuance of the conversation among these scientists that I was listening in on. It was very, very fine and very detailed, and it made me think even more deeply about this fact of, like, you know, we do talk a lot, and space talks, you know, it's all about collaboration in space, which is what I think one of the things that people love so much about space exploration. But you putting like almost like a blueprint in place so that people can work out these things before they're on the moon, I think is absolute wisdom. And that is just absolute wisdom. I hadn't thought about it from that angle before. That's really fascinating.
And that's what analogs are all about, really. It's you know, figuring these things out in the non-hostile environment of the Earth before you go and risk it all in space. You know, if you can figure these things out here, that as much as possible, you know, that's kind of what we try to do.
Yeah, good, cool. There's also another pretty famous analog site in Hawaii, no?
Yes, high seas, yeah. So I mean, as I think people know, that there was a volcano eruption recently.
Yeah.
I am told that high seas has survived, which is great. So yes, high seas. So recently, their mission director, she moved away from high seas to do some other work. So at the moment, they're not taking any crews, but you know, in the future, I can't imagine they're not closing down or anything like that. I imagine they will again be available for that, but at present, they're not taking any crews on. Okay,
interesting. Have you, can I ask, have you yourself participated, or do you plan on participating as an analog astronaut?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently just came back from MDRS this November. So that was a mission over in Utah, and it was fantastic. It was really great. My goal is absolutely to participate and continue participating more. I've already got 3 albums planned for next year. Really, the time is the biggest constraint on this, of course. 3 in 1 year is extremely ambitious. So I generally try not to do that many in 1 year. But a lot of these analogs for me, especially from now on, are going to be precursors to world's biggest analog. So for like the SAM missions I mentioned that we're going to hold before and after the conference, I'm not actually going to be the crew on that, but one of our goals is to use those missions to test out a mini collaboration, a mini even if it's just a day, to work with another habitat, like say Lunaris or MDRS or any of the other habitats. So that we have to run these smaller collaborative missions before we can jump into like the world's biggest analog. So that's really going to be the focus of many of my analog activities next year and probably in 2024 as well.
Learning by doing kind of a thing.
Learning by doing.
That is ambitious. What are some of your big takeaways after an experience like that? Like, how many days is it, and is it so intense? Are you like really are you so very intensely close with other people in a confined environment, or?
So again, this varies between mission to mission and habitat to habitat. But for me, so MDRS is, okay, so again, it's all relative depending on you as an individual. For me, a surprisingly spacious habitat. So you have a lower deck and an upper deck at MDRS, and the upper deck has sort of the living area where you have a table where you do your work and where you would eat, and a small kitchen area, and then off of that is your own little bedroom space, which is quite small. You know, you got like a single bed in there, and that's essentially it, but very comfortable. But obviously there's certain things that you have to think about that you wouldn't think about at home, like water usage. The type of food you're eating is very different. So for some people, those kind of things can be challenging, like taking one shower or no showers for the duration of 2 weeks. So the missions typically at MDRS tend to last 2 weeks. So mine was a 2-week mission. That can be difficult for some people. But really the type of personalities that this tends to attract are the type of people who are okay with things like that. Yeah. For me personally, spending that time with the crew in like those close quarters was really great. You know, I happened to have a wonderful crew who I got on with really well, but again, that's going to vary from mission to mission, and that's part of why we are thinking more and more about training pre-mission. One of the things that is unavoidable wherever you have people, there's going to be some form of drama, because people come with drama. So we have to think about things like that. We have to do leadership training. We have to do crew cohesion, along with getting people like mentally and physically prepared for these missions as well. So that's something that Emily Apollonio, who's one of my amazing volunteers and also has her company's Interstellar Performance Labs, that's something she works on. And it's something that I was discussing with Kai from SAM Analog Habitat as well, where they're really focused on this pre-mission training, because I think it's super important. The last thing you want to do, or what we're trying to avoid, is just throwing people together without any kind of preparation. You wouldn't get as much out of your mission if you did that. And the same for a debriefing after the mission. Really, the prep and the debrief is the way to get the most out of these 2 weeks or longer 1-month missions as well. Like some of the government agencies do much longer missions. They've done 1-month missions at high seas, and they've done longer ones. They've got very different. They've got Hera, which I think they did a year, or I can't remember how long exactly. They had Mars 500, which I think was a 2-year mission or something like that. So they do some pretty extreme missions, but those are also, and again, they don't just throw a crew in there. They're training these people and preparing them for this mission, and so we want to kind of follow a similar path.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I've got a couple requests to ask questions from the chat. Looks like we have another analog astronaut too joining us. Would love to hear from Nicole. And I think Tushar, you've raised your hand. Tushar, if you'd like to unmute and ask Jas a question, please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. I'm audible. Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you for giving to opportunity to my ask. I'm from India, and I asked to ma'am to can you send your contact information like email ID or LinkedIn ID, because in India many people don't know about this kind of activities happening all over the world. I like to awareness of this kind of activity in my country. For that purpose I need your guidance and contact information for that. Sorry if I did some mistake in speaking English. Sorry.
No, you.
And thank you.
I understood everything. Thank you for your kind of question. Yeah. So India has got, like I think I mentioned, they've run some analog missions in Ladakh, and that's affiliated with Amity University. There's a member of our community who's actually trying to set up a habitat in India as well. So Tushar, I don't know, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I don't know if you're a member of the community, the first thing I would suggest to you is join the Mighty Networks community, and you can message me directly in the community, and I can connect you with people in India who are doing similar things and things that you're interested in. So there's, potential for you to reach out to them and work with them in India as well. And another thing that we're quite conscious of is the conferences last 2 years has been held in the US, and we offered some scholarships last year, and we're offering scholarships again this year. Some people struggle to get visas to get to the US. So what we're very conscious of is making this available to people from everywhere in the world, including India. So we are possibly considering for 2024 having the location of the conference in a different place. One of the places we're thinking about is Jordan. So it'd be much easier for people from India to travel there, get a visa, and from the rest of Asia and from the Middle East. So we're trying to hopefully bring more attention to this in countries like Asian countries, and also make it accessible for people from Asian countries to come together and be in the room to have these conversations with people from more established countries in this field, like the USA or European countries. So I'll drop the link in the chat in case you missed it. I'm just going to drop in the chat so you have the link to the community as well.
Yeah, I actually, I do think it has been dropped a couple of times, but yeah, please do. And I joined your community. What about it? I think a year ago or so. And there's great people on. There's always, lively conversations. If you're at all interested in space, this is one of the most welcoming and friendly communities. And you're saying that they're volunteers, which surprises me, because these people are so brilliant. I mean, Bailey is brilliant. Emily you're brilliant. You're all brilliant people. So the fact that you're actually doing this as volunteers, it really shows it's a labor of love. You're cultivating inclusivity for space. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Bailey. I saw that in the chat. Yeah. By the way, I should have said this from the beginning. Jas is not like a minute. She's not a lot smaller than me, and I'm not a giant.
I'm a tiny human being.
It's the way our cameras are showing up in this virtual world. Too funny. You're one of Santa's helpers, Jas.
Yeah, I'm just a little elf.
No, very, very funny. So many great. Did anybody else? If anybody else has a question, please either raise your hand or put it in the chat, because this is definitely a good time for that. And also
Nicole's message about high seas. Yes, they look small from the outside, like when you approach the habitat, it looks like the small sort of area, but when you walk in, you're actually pleasantly surprised by the space that's in there. So yeah, I just saw that Nicole felt the same about high seas as well. High seas is a really interesting. So the cool thing about these habitats is they all have a unique something unique about them. So MDRS is in the Utah desert, which is like really analogous to the Mars kind of geology. High seas has got those incredible lava tubes. Lunares is completely self-contained. So in Lunares, you never go outside for an EVA. They have a hangar. And so your EVAs are actually conducted inside this hangar. So every single one, then, I mentioned Sam already being like the hermetically sealed habitat. So it's every single one of these has something unique about it. So for me, like, going to each and every one of them and getting a better feel for what they do really well and how they can benefit researchers is really important. I think somebody has a question.
Oh, can fund other projects? Oh, I guess it's a question for me. Yep. Can FrontierDAO fund other projects regarding the distributed autonomous organization? bit. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a question for me. So we are setting ourselves up to be in that kind of a position. In fact, that is our goal. You know, you mentioned, Jas, you mentioned scholarships. And our goal is to have a treasury so that we could, for example, offer some scholarships to participate in your conference. You know, for people who are from, you know, different backgrounds or maybe underserved communities. And we are also focused on doing sort of seed funding of small projects in the areas of space innovation and emerging technology. We're in all honesty, we're not there yet. We were founded, I'm a co-founder, so in August of 2021. So we're slowly growing. But that is our intent. It is our intent would be to sponsor projects like this, offer scholarships for people to participate, you know, like Jas was saying. So we're growing, building, and working hard. But you know, the thing, what you're building here, Jas, is exactly what we want to help support, because you're actually building the ways for people to participate. You know, it's not just like you're not just saying we want people to participate, we want to be inclusive. You're actually creating opportunities for people to do that. And there's a big difference there. You know, one is creating the space, and the other is communicating an intent. And they're both good, but creating a space gives people the place to walk into it. So yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, and as people have recognized now in the chat, you know, you've got yes, you're welcome. Somebody said thank you. Yeah. As people have recognized in the chat, your team is stellar. You know, and every time I see Emily's last name, I have to say Apollonio, and she's in space. It's like, that is just so great. Apollo, there must be a story there. I'll have to ask her one day.
I always want to spell it with the like Apollo as well, and I always have to correct myself. It's very cool. Yeah, no, my team of honestly, like, none of this would have been possible without those incredible people. They really, it's all built on goodwill and passion of people who want to do this, but to do it together as a community, and to take themselves and the community with them wherever they're going, right? Like we don't want to, I always say, what's the point in going to space on your own? You want your friends there with you, you want your community there with you, and you want to work together. And I couldn't feel more strongly about that since having kind of worked with these incredible people. So yeah, it's huge credit to them. So more, yeah, Bailey, Emily, you know, there's a bunch of others as well. There's so many wonderful people behind the scenes.
Terry, yeah.
Terry's doing that. We got Jenny Hesterman, Beth Mund was helping us as well.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Space, yeah. We've got Ryan involved as well, helping Rebecca. A lot of space kinders, actually. There is an overlap between the two communities, and I think that's because our values are sort of aligned, which does help a lot. We're partnered with Space Kind as well, so yeah, it's a wonderful, like, two wonderful communities coming together.
Yeah, those are wonderful communities. As soon as you said I want to go to the moon, but I don't want to go alone, it's like I was like, Space Kinder.
Yeah, exactly right.
But I mean, that makes so much sense. I mean, it's like, who would want to be on the moon all alone?
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, if someone's offering, I'm going to take it, but I do want to, yeah, you want to take people with you.
Mm-hmm. You know, we have a couple last minutes here, and I wanted to touch on the point that you made at the beginning of your presentation, which is such a great point. You were saying from space for Earth. Is that the quote? Am I saying that correctly?
Evolving solving for, oh God, when we solve for space, we solve for Earth.
When we solve for space, we solve for Earth. Can you, somebody has their hand raised, maybe you could put that in the chat, because I'd love to explore this point just in our last couple of minutes. Can you go into that a little bit more? I know that that NASA with SpaceX just launched their, it was just like yesterday or the day before, the SWOT satellite. I think it's actually a partnership between SpaceX and CNES, so the French CNES, the French space agency. And it's I'm trying to bring it up on my screen. It's not really coming up, but it's like solving water or satellite for water over Earth technology. And anyway, it's a great illustration about using space technology to solve problems on Earth. And this one is particularly focused on water issues. So, but I was hoping you could maybe say a few more words, because you're much more knowledgeable about this than I am.
I'm not sure I'm necessarily more knowledgeable about those particular topics, but I completely agree with you. So this, I mean, again, this goes back to, we're going back to the beginning of like kind of space flight, really. A lot of the technologies that are developed for space missions have then gone on to have applications here on Earth to improve people's lives on Earth. So I think, don't quote me on these, but people should do their own kind of Google research on this. But there's the technologies ranging from, I believe, ultrasound, hearing aids, battery technology, all of these small things that have had a knock-on, really like beneficial effect to communities here on Earth. And then touching on like the SWOT that you mentioned, this is one of, I think, many satellites out there that are doing this kind of data collection and mapping. So I believe their goal is to map like every single water body on the planet, and they'll be able to use that to monitor the water levels. They'll be able to use that to help like flood areas or flood risk areas. So there's like, you know, disaster and risk mitigation. Mm-hmm. Often these places happen in developing countries as well, where people don't necessarily have the resources themselves to mitigate these. So it's just enormously beneficial. I think they're doing it with agriculture, land use. There's like the satellite technology I know is big and really helping with the data collection for these sort of things. It helps in, like I already said, in when it comes to like natural disasters. And you mentioned CNES or CNES, sorry, you pronounce it. I need to look more into them, because I briefly looked through their website, and there's a lot of information for people who want to learn more about this. I think it's a fantastic organization it's a great resource for learning more about how space technology is currently helping us here on Earth. And the stuff I was talking about with some of the research that's going on, not just in the analog world, but in general in the space industry, a lot of it is to do with how to best utilize very, very limited resources. And we're getting, we're at the point here on Earth now where finally we're trying to do something about the fact that we've been acting like we've just got infinite resource, and we haven't. And we need to think more about completely closed systems, recycling and minimizing waste, and different ways of producing energy and all these things. So all of or even if we go to like food production, there's all these companies now who are synthesizing food, like lab grown meats and things, and other endeavors that are useful for space but are equally useful for just food consumption on Earth. So there's enormous overlaps, and many more people far more knowledgeable about the subject than I am. I think, it's just a really exciting overlap between climate change, sustainability, and space.
Yeah, no, those are great points. There's always other people who are more knowledgeable about everything. I mean, there's always, no, you're very knowledgeable. That was great insight to share. I think it is important because what I've been finding since diving into sort of the space community a few years ago, I'm a very recent space enthusiast. Is that there seems to be two camps, and the two camps are, either you're a real space enthusiast, or you're kind of like, why are we spending all this money on space? That's what I've been seeing. And so it feels like, I know NASA does a lot of communication about, hey, this space technology got us GPS and, and all kinds of things. I mean, that's the most famous one, right? That's the most famous reference. So it just seems like the more we're aware that, all this space technology is actually being used for the benefit of humankind here on our planet, it seems the better. And you referenced, climate change and food security and just, all kinds of stuff, now, energy, so all kinds of stuff. Anyway, yeah. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to reiterate your point. You mentioned that, like, one of the best examples of all, which is everybody uses a cell phone, right? And satellite technology and internet. I mean, look how it's changed our world. Some might argue not for the better, but I would say on the whole we could maybe agree that for the better. So, like, that is one of the most obvious examples of how pushing like space and space technology has really helped benefit people on Earth.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. Do you have any final thoughts? I can't believe it. We're at time already. That was a wonderful presentation. I want to thank you very much again. And also I want to thank our sponsors, Filecoin Foundation and Unfinished for their support of this. And I'll leave you to leave us with your final thoughts, Jas, please.
Thank you again. Thank you to everybody who has attended this webinar. I again would just encourage you guys to join the community and talk to people. It's a really welcoming place. I hope to see some of you maybe at the conference, but I am available as well. You feel free to reach out to me at any point. In the community website, it's one of the easiest places to get hold of me. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Paige, as well. It's been
thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, bye for now, and happy end of year holidays to everybody.
Happy Christmas, everyone.